Peter leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. So it all comes down to people. Politicians who refuse to take responsibility, those who rely on power. That's right. Alphonse nodded. They cry out that the president is wrong, but they themselves do nothing. The Constitution is just an excuse. Even if we change to a cabinet system, if they don't change, politics will fall back into the same pit. A shadow of skepticism flashed across Peter's eyes for a moment. So where can change begin? If not in the system, if it's in people, where should we begin? Alphonse paused for a moment. He turned the cold film with his fingertips, the light gliding across the glass. I'm not against a cabinet system. I'm just wary of those who mistakenly believe it's the key to salvation. He slowly raised his head and looked straight at Peter. What we really need to discuss isn't the system, but a culture of responsibility. The issue isn't how to change the Constitution, but the human will to uphold it. Only then did Peter smile. So you're saying that the problem isn't the system, but people? Alphonse raised his glass and spoke quietly. Yes, Peter. Changing a system is easy. Hold a meeting, amend the articles, and issue a declaration. That's it. But changing people, it skips a generation. People who don't know that always talk about changing politics by citing the Constitution, but in the end, nothing changes. Peter nodded and chuckled softly. Then, at this Bastos meeting, we should talk less about the system and more about people. That's right, Alphonse said. Let's reconvene another meeting in Bastos soon. This time, let's discuss not the articles of the Constitution, but those who will uphold them. The two men remained silent for a moment. Their gazes drifted beyond each other, toward somewhere far away. At the heart of politics, the two men were discussing the essence of humanity, rather than the logic of institutions. And in that moment, Peter knew. This quiet conversation foreshadowed the profound changes to come. The rain stopped, and Peter alighted from his car, and disappeared into the crowd that had already arrived at the cemetery. The leaderless crowd cheered loudly as Peter ascended the podium. We must choose now. The name of Otense echoes throughout this land. Otense's final words, federalism and parliamentarism. This is the path we must protect. We must preserve the unique characteristics of both regions and live as one forest. At that moment, the crowd erupted in unison. Federalism, parliamentarism. The chants, like waves, filled the cemetery. From a distance, the sound sounded like a festival. But up close, it was clearly the echo of resistance. It was the language of the people, a sound that called not to death, but to life. Deportation corpse bag. Yaoundé Airport Cargo Warehouse. A few days later, Secretary Park was busy, preparing the coffin and the body of Kim Min-cheol, who was returning home. Documents were filled out, weighed, and stickers were affixed. Numbers were written down before names. The smell of burning airplane fuel tickled his nose. In that place where the scent of preservatives and unfamiliar spices mingled, the unattended corpse bag was placed into an aluminum coffin. The teguki was draped over it. Teho could hear the sound of the wind blowing. Secretary Park's actions were silent, but complex emotions were entangled within. He barely maintained his composure as he tied the teguki with a rope to the coffin, leaving Kim Min-cheol as a corpse in a foreign land where no one could care for him. Teho held his breath. He gazed at the scene, his body chilled to the bone. It was the bare minimum courtesy the world around him had to uphold. At that moment, Teho suppressed his surging emotions, feeling the gap between death and life and the inner workings of Secretary Park, who protected the warmth of humanity within that gap. Yoon Tae-ho stood on the edge of the runway, his wrists shackled in cold metal handcuffs. A chilling wind blew, but his sweat remained. One of the secret police officers urged him on. Move quickly. It's almost boarding time. He didn't move even after hearing that. Instead, he muttered, glancing toward the warehouse, You erased even the name. Are you just going to leave it as a number now? Another officer approached him with an annoyed voice. Shut up and follow me. What are you talking about? That coffin has already crossed the border. You'll be the same soon. Yoon Tae-ho turned his head and glared at him. I'm not a criminal. I haven't broken any laws. So why are you dragging me away like an animal? The secret police officer sneered and placed a hand on his holster. We decide whether someone is a criminal or not. The court has its say. We're simply following the rules of criminal deportation procedures. A silence fell for a moment. The roar of the plane's engines grew louder at the end of the runway. The metallic vibrations traveled along the ground to my ankles. The third officer, holding onto the radio, spoke coldly. Just stop there. You're currently a deportee, and if you say one more word, it'll be recorded as insubordination. Insubordination means riot, and rioting means one bullet. Yun Tai-ho let out a hollow laugh. One of the officers hardened his face and shoved him roughly on the shoulder. If you don't walk, I'll drag you away. Taking a deep breath, he pulled a small notepad from his pocket. His handcuffed hands trembled, but he wrote down a single name. In clear, uncurled handwriting, Kim, Min, Sheol. He pressed the letters down like a stamp, staring at it before slowly handing it to the secret police. It was a name tag for a corpse. Put it on. Minchol, let's go back now. It was like a soliloquy to himself. Those low, broken words were a protest, a voice speaking for the oppressed. Later, when he was finally assigned a seat at the boarding gate, the secret police finally released his handcuffs and handed him his passport. From here, freedom begins. The evening lights of Yaoundé faded beyond the airplane window. Yun Tai-ho gently placed his palm against the window. There, Minchol, Hortense, and the shadows of the still-living people overlapped. As the plane disappeared into the clouds, he finally sang for them, a fervent cry to go forth for a lifetime without holding back. Love, honor, or name. Comrades are nowhere to be found, only the flag flutters. Let's not waver until a new day arrives. Exile wasn't a punishment for him. From that day on, it tore everything apart. Rather, it was the right to leave the stage of human drama. The city was covered in the yellow dust of the dry season, and when the squalls drenched it with red powder, it was difficult to discern even the city in front of us. Even the feeling of being alive was clouded by the sun and heat, and his mind was dim. They say that when the scent of a local tastes like sesame salt, it's time for a foreigner to leave. May has already arrived again.